Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts is now a Super Bowl MVP, but many people bet against him. And I'm one of them. I watched nearly every college game Jalen played, and my assessment was he doesn't throw the football accurately enough to play pro football, much less win a Super Bowl. Not only did Jalen prove me wrong, he did so with class and professionalism that is rarely seen in an arena littered with giant egos and prima donnas. If you are a casual football fan who only knows of Hurts now that he's won a Super Bowl, let me walk you through an inspirational timeline of perseverance. In 2016, Jalen Hurts arrives at the University of Alabama, becomes the first true freshman to start at quarterback for the Tide in 32 years and the first ever for head coach Nick Saban. Puts up historic first-year stats, 2,700 passing yards, 36 total touchdowns, rushes for 954, breaking the Bama single-season QB rush record, starts 14-0, leads the Tide to the national championship, where they lose to Deshaun Watson and the Clemson Tigers. Leads Alabama back to the title game as a sophomore, but plays so poorly in the first half, he's benched for freshman quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, now the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Hurts watches from the sideline as Tua rallies Alabama back and throws one of the most consequential game-winning touchdowns in college football history to Devonta Smith, Jalen's now teammate in Philly. Rather than transferring after that season, Jalen returns to Tuscaloosa in 2018 to compete against Tua, ultimately, though, losing his starting job and serving as a backup the entire year, amid calls from many to change positions. It's Tua now who guides Bama to the SEC championship, but suffers an injury. And who else is there but Jalen Hurts to lead Alabama in a comeback win against the same Georgia program he struggled with in the title game the year before. Then he transfers to Oklahoma, never once disparaging Alabama or head coach Nick Saban, shatters the single-game total yardage record with 508 yards in his first start for OU, leads the Sooners to the college football playoff, finishes second in the Heisman Trophy voting behind Joe Burrow, but impresses the Eagles so much with his development they draft him in the second round, despite having Carson Wentz as a starter. It takes only 3 months before Jalen wins the starting job as a rookie, leads Philly to Super Bowl 57, plays pretty well, but they lose, and he has a crucial fumble along the way. Fans question whether or not he's the right quarterback to compete against stars like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But now, 2 years later, he's your Super Bowl MVP. While the guy he lost his job to, Tua Tagovailoa, the guy he lost a national championship to, Deshaun Watson, the guy he lost the Heisman Trophy to, Joe Burrow, the two Heisman Trophy winning predecessors at Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, are all chasing something Jalen Hurts now has, a Super Bowl victory. Let this serve as a great life lesson. Stay the course and keep the faith. Thoughts?
I think you encapsulated that perfectly, and I think there's some people that don't know really the true background of what Jalen Hurts went through to get to this point. And, you know, it's funny, now looking back at it and listening to you put it, you know, so articulately, it's almost like the tortoise and the hare to me. You know, Jalen Hurts, not that he wasn't a big deal. He was a big deal. You know, you get to the national championship game in this, but it seems like he would always get passed up, right? But he just kept on going. As far off as it seemed, as slow as it seemed to build, getting passed by Tua, right? Seeing what Baker did and what Kyler did and what Joe Burrow did. It is just, it's an amazing story of perseverance. And to be honest with you, I don't know if there's a guy out there that deserves this more than Jalen Hurts. And I'm so glad you went all the way back to the beginning so people can really see how keeping the faith, and you see him express his faith all the time now.
You know, God is good. He's greater than all the highs and the lows.
It's an amazing story, and I hope a lot of young kids, regardless of what your background is, can take something from this, because I think Jalen Hurts is a fantastic role model for young people everywhere.
You know, a lot of people talk about the Tua Tagovailoa situation at Alabama as if, oh, now this is proof that they made the wrong decision in benching Jalen Hurts. Tua is one of the greatest college quarterbacks.
Well, Tua thinks
from an accuracy standpoint.
You know, like that was the right decision. Alabama was putting up historical numbers that year that Tua started. But this guy comes in at a moment in the SEC championship game, wins that for them, never complained along the way this whole time. That's why I wanted to highlight this. And now he's a Super Bowl champion and MVP.
I just don't remember Jalen Hurts ever having off-field problems. I going back to all the trust me, I've watched Jalen since he's been in Alabama. I'm an Auburn fan myself. I've watched him grow and get better. I've seen him stumble and come back up. And I think you can see that from Jalen, but not only from Jalen, but that bleeds onto his team with the Eagles. I mean, they weren't always phenomenal this year, didn't always have the best talent, but they got better and better and better in each week. And if your leaders can have that mindset, that's going to funnel down to the rest of your players. Because look, you can say what you want. I think Jalen Hurts' story is great, but the quarterbacks you named on that list, I would take a lot of those quarterbacks over Jalen Hurts.
For sure.
I mean, Kyler Murray, I would take over Jalen Hurts. Joe Burrow, I would take over Jalen Hurts. Baker Mayfield, I think you can have an honest conversation about that. But the mentality of Jalen Hurts, I think that's what separated himself, and also the Eagles having a phenomenal roster.
Well, and you know, the juxtaposition of today in society of somebody who handles their business as a star like Jalen Hurts, maybe the path that Jalen Hurts had to take that led him from Alabama to Oklahoma and then getting drafted in the second round to put him at the Eagles, that has a team around him that can actually win a Super Bowl, turns out it's probably the best thing that could have possibly happened.
There's no doubt he got drafted to a great team and a great organization, right? But in an era where we always say it's the quarterback who wins the Super Bowls, who wins the championships, and he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and beat him and actually played worse than he did, I thought, in the first Super Bowl where they lost. And I think a big part of this, too, is you got to talk about Devontae Smith. How cool is it that he catches the game-winning touchdown from Tua in the national championship while Jalen Hurts is watching on the sideline, but then catches a touchdown in the Super Bowl from his now teammate Jalen Hurts, and he's achieved a rare trifecta, the fifth player in NFL history to win a Heisman Trophy, the national championship, and then the Super Bowl. Do you guys know the other four?
God, did Joe Montana win the Heisman?
Mm-mm.
No. Who is it?
Marcus Allen,
Yep.
Reggie Bush,
Yeah.
Tony Dorsett, and Charles Woodson.
Wow. I'll say this too. The coolest thing about Devontae Smith is that I think his senior year of high school, they lost in the last second in New Orleans, in the Dome, in the state championship.
Really?
And he goes on to have some of his biggest moments in the same place. And there's a picture of him sitting on the field with his helmet just laying down crying because they lost it. You want to talk about another guy that came full circle?
Yeah.
It's an awesome story.
Also, the first player drafted out of Alabama to have a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
That's insane.
Think
That's
about
the
that.
most insane
about that.
stat.
I mean, considering the first three Super Bowls were won by Alabama quarterbacks, Bart Starr, Joe Namath, Kenny Stabler was one too. But from a skill position standpoint, no player drafted out of Alabama. Remember, like Jalen Hurts scored a couple years ago, but he was drafted out of Oklahoma. That's wild.
The fact that from the Nick Saban era, just the Nick Saban era, from 2008 up until, this past year when Nick Saban retired, none of his players scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. When you look at how many rosters are littered with Alabama players in the NFL, I wonder what the odds of that would have been if you could have put odds on it in Vegas. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Appreciate you guys being here. If you haven't noticed, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're dropping new segments of our new show, Locker Room Talk, so make sure you're subscribed and keep up with that, as well as all the beautiful things here at Crain & Company Goes to College.